Hello and welcome to News9 Plus. You're with me, Sandeep Unnithan, and I have with me today a very special guest, Savio Rodrigues, editor of GoaChronicles. Savio, welcome to News9 Plus.
Thank you, Sandeep, for invited me to your show.
Savio, we just had a very, very enlightening visit of Israel. We spent a week there together. Tell us your first thoughts from that trip. What was the first thing about this that you didn't know? You're a geopolitical expert. You've been tracking the region very closely. A year after those horrific October 7th terror attacks, what was the biggest takeaway for you from that trip to Israel?
You see, Sandeep, ever since the horrific Hamas terror attack happened, there were many videos that were circulating about the atrocity and the brutality behind the attack. But when we got an opportunity to see it by our sources over there that obviously I cannot name, we saw the extent of the brutality.
Yes.
Okay, I don't want to describe to your viewers the extent of the brutality because this is not even human behavior. Yes. This is demonic behavior. There were atrocities committed to young women. Yes. That we have seen from videos that were on the cams that the terrorists had carried on themselves, the body cams. There were atrocities created to the elderly people. There were atrocities created, like the video, to the Thai man who was a caretaker. You know, a child was shot. I mean, what are we talking about, Sandeep?
Absolutely, demonic behavior.
It brings me to tears. I'm greatly disturbed. One of the reasons I haven't gone to Goa and chose to be in Delhi for 3 days is to actually, get it out of my system, what I've seen. Otherwise, like everybody else, I should have gone home after the trip. Yes. But I've decided to stay here and talk about it because I want the world to know that you are everyone, a large concentrated set of people are questioning Israel's attack on the Hamas terrorists and bringing Palestine forward. In the videos that we saw, in the terrorists that came, and when the boundaries and the borders were broken down, it was civilian Gaza, Palestinians from Gaza who came into that place.
Yes.
And were a part of the atrocities, were a part of that massacre. They were rejoicing. One of the videos that we saw, which has not been made public, was how when a soldier was brought, the civilians were kicking that soldier on his face. His head was smashed.
Yes.
What are we talking about? This insanity?
Absolutely. Insanity, demonic behavior, Savio, as you said, and those videos shook me as well. Unfortunately, we cannot play those out. They're far too graphic. It cannot be grasped by any civilized person. The kind of behavior that the Hamas terrorists and indeed the civilians exhibited on that day of 7th of October, which is where this entire conflict began, restarted. But now, Savio, we are here nearly a year later. We're very close to the first anniversary of the October 7th massacre. Do you think Israel will go in and attack Hezbollah like it's been threatening to do over the last couple of days? We were there. If you remember, in that hotel room when the ballistic missile was fired at Tel Aviv, at the Mossad headquarters, not very far from where our hotel was, and we heard the thump of interceptors going in, shooting down that ballistic missile. How did this northern front suddenly open up?
Well, it's not suddenly, Sandeep. Many people forget that after the October 7th attack happened, the terror attack happened and the brutality came out to the world, Israel was planning to have some sort of a retaliatory measure to what happened, but they were still in a state of shock.
Yes.
On October 8th, you had Hezbollah that actually attacked Israel. Hezbollah didn't have anything to do with this particular war. Yes. Why did they get into it? It was a Israel-Hamas problem, and they were dealing with it, right? But Hezbollah has attacked Israel on October 8th. More importantly, in the last 1 year, 9,000 missiles have been shot from Hezbollah towards Israel. About 1,000 drone missiles or drone bombs were thrown by Hezbollah to Israel. Do you expect Israel to keep quiet?
Absolutely not.
You have got, most importantly, after these flurry of missiles that have come in, there are almost 70,000 people from that side that has been displaced.
Yes.
Who's going to be answerable to the people who are displaced because of the missiles that have been sent from Hezbollah?
Important point you made there, Savio. 70,000 people displaced inside Israel. It's the largest number of internally displaced persons in Israel's history. Never since 1948 have they seen such a large mass of population moving from one place of the country to the other. We calculated it's almost 1% of Israel's population has been displaced. So are you saying that Israel now has literally no option but to launch a full-scale ground invasion of Lebanon?
See, there were two strategies that Israel adopted, and they had to have adopted that strategy primarily because when the attack happened, Israel has always been known to be, military ready, defense ready, covert ready, but they never expected, they thought they lived safe and secure. Yes. They never expected this terror attack to happen. They are okay with somebody taking them to war. You were sending rockets to them. They are okay. They will counter.
They were living with it for many years.
Yeah. So they were used to it.
Yes.
This particular invasion that happened, they came almost 30 kilometers into Israel. So they came there with an intention to cause much more severe harm.
Yes.
In the videos, the brutality of the videos that we spoke about actually exposes the intent of the Hamas terrorists and the Palestinian civilians who are a part of it.
Yes.
Right? So Israel has no option, Sandeep. If Israel as a country has to come back to the stature of respect that it had, the government has to ensure two things. One is Hamas is eradicated from its roots. Yes. Hamas is a terror organization. You might kill the body, you might kill a leader of theirs, but if what will happen is that they will grow back again. Islamic terrorism, Islamic radicalism must be eradicated in the region if you want peace in that region. Otherwise, peace is never going to come. Hezbollah is just another face of the same coin. And that is why Hezbollah is more dangerous than Hamas.
Yes.
Because Hezbollah has more military prowess than Hamas had. They are more organized, they are more lethal, and they can fight a war because they have fought a war before. Yes. Right? The point is, will Israel work towards the intent of keeping its country safe and secure? Because that's what the citizens want. Netanyahu, if he wants to continue to stay in power, he will have to launch a ground invasion of Hezbollah and push them towards the end of the border as per what the terms of the UN resolutions were. Yes. He has to do that because people are watching, the people of Israel are watching, the people of Israel want to have their confidence. Nobody in Israel is asking for the failure of October 7th. They are aware, they will ask the questions, and people responsible for it will be judged at that time. But right now they want Israel safe and secure, and Netanyahu knows that, and that is what Netanyahu has to do. What you saw on September 7th is a reflection of Israel getting back to what it does best. It is going to be a long task, but Netanyahu, if he backs off now, he will lose face, and I don't think Netanyahu wants to lose face.
So face, I think, is really important what you mentioned, Savio, the fact that it's not just Netanyahu, but the Israeli defense forces also that suffered enormous loss of face. And in fact, the ordinary civilians that we were speaking to said this to us, that on the 17th, on the 7th of October, what happened was a severe loss of face for us. It shook our confidence, our faith in the Israeli military's ability to protect us. A lot of that was restored on the 17th of September when the pager blasts, which, by the way, Israel has never claimed credit for, when Hezbollah's leadership was paralyzed by these attacks, I think there was an upsurge of positive sentiment towards the government. But, the whole thing, like you mentioned, is also about Benjamin Netanyahu, this man who's in search of a legacy of being one of the tallest Israeli prime ministers ever. He's been fighting all kinds of corruption charges. He was deeply unpopular when the attacks took place. In fact, he continues to be unpopular until September 17th, which is when a lot of his street cred, a lot of Israel's street cred has kind of gone up after the attacks, because this is what Israel does the best. That's the public understanding of those explosions. But how important is what Benjamin Netanyahu believes? How important is that going to be for the future of West Asia and the Middle East? Let's not forget, here's the guy who held up that map, if you remember, Savio, of a new West Asia, a kind of a peaceful, a tranquil West Asia on which they had laid the foundation for the I2U2 and indeed IMEC, the corridor that was going to link the entire region in an economic corridor of peace.
See, keeping aside Benjamin Netanyahu's political ambitions, keeping aside his political mistakes also, at this point of time, Israel needs a warrior leader to get them out of the destruction that they have gone through. So he needs to get that confidence of the people back, which is why when I asked a lot of people that I spoke to, they are not bothered about the inquiry that everybody is talking about. Let's put a blame onto somebody. They are of the opinion that it will happen. Right now, we want Netanyahu and the rest of the armed forces to ensure Israel is back to safety and security. Because what happened on October 7th, what is happening with Hezbollah right now, is that comfort, that peace, that serenity that Israel had with itself and other parts of the region is now not there. Because if they're going to come to as close as Tel Aviv, they're going to go to Haifa, they're going to go to other places. They're trying different areas. So Israel as a nation is not safe at this point of time. It's not feeling safe. And that is what Netanyahu understands. That is what the armed forces have understood now. You and I both know that there was a failure of intelligence as well as action by the government prior to October 7th. They should have acted on October 6th, 9th, when there was some information that did come out to them. But the timing was such that it was Sabbath. They did not have the human intelligence. They relied completely on the tech intelligence, which is why Israel has changed over the last 1 year. They've invested a lot on human intelligence. So Netanyahu understands that if he is not able to bring back the pride of Israel by dealing with terrorists, by keeping their people safe, please understand, they want to take their displaced people and give them back to the region they've been displaced from. But to do that, they need to be safe and secure. There's no point putting them and them dying over a blast again. No. That is the intent.
Safety
the intent is not to get rid of
civilians.
Lebanon or invade Lebanon or to invade the Gaza side. That's not what they want. They want to keep the people of Israel safe. And to keep them safe, they have to eradicate the threat that is there.
Absolutely. But Savio, you believe that Netanyahu has no option now but to invade southern Lebanon. What are the consequences going to be, a larger regional consequences of Israeli ground invasion of southern Lebanon?
Well, I believe that the only way, this is my personal opinion, and I'm not going to look at it from a geopolitical point of view, because we can all pontificate about what is the geopolitical repercussions that happen. But Netanyahu and the people of Israel are only interested in one thing: can our people be safe? Whatever the other world thinks, what the US thinks, what Iran thinks, what China thinks, that's a part of our discussion. But they want to be safe. If they have to be safe, the existential threats that they have to be dealt with. You're not looking at having somebody who's going to keep cutting at you in 1,000 cuts on your body. They want to address that, because the 1,000 cuts became a big bomb right on October 7th in front of them.
And it blew up in their face. But as you said, Savio, now the United States, now that's the external actor, which is actually also an internal actor in this crisis. How important do you think the US elections are going to be for what Netanyahu is going to do now? 5th of November is when the US goes into the presidential elections, just a little over a month away from now. How is the US presidential elections going to impact Israel's internal security decisions?
I would believe that Netanyahu knows for certain that Donald Trump's not going to come back, and it's going to be Kamala Harris. And if Kamala Harris comes back, there'll be a push to absurd diplomacy that never worked in the first place. It was this absurd diplomacy that saw US, Qatar and Israel give $30 million every year to de-radicalizing the radicalized, which is an absurd theory.
Right.
You can't de-radicalize the radicalized. You might kill the Hamas body, but the ideology remains the same.
Yes.
The ideology continues. So you can't de-radicalize them.
Right.
Most of the money that was used, given by them,
Yes.
was utilized for arms, for getting arms. Where did they get such sophisticated arms that we saw?
Absolutely.
Is that a militant organization with militant arms?
Right.
No, they were almost armed like an army out there.
Conventional army infantry assault on civilians of the kind that we've possibly not seen in recent years. But interesting observations there, Savio, on the fact that how Benjamin Netanyahu believes that his window of opportunity to move into southern Lebanon is closing very fast. It's not just the US presidential elections, but also, I was just reading up on this, the fact that there is a winter that's setting in November, which means that the army will have to move in October. And that is the only campaign season that they have, literally a month to settle scores with Hezbollah before they can get civilians back.
I think Netanyahu wants to send a message to the terrorists before October 7th. He wants to send a strong message to the rest of the world that are supporting the terrorists, including the people in Palestine, that listen, enough is enough. Don't take us for granted. Yes, we want to come to the table for peace. That is why we put in peace with other Arab nations. The Abraham Accords was a sign of that. The fact that they were willing to agree to socio-economic welfare of the people of Gaza was an attempt on that. This concept of the two-state theory that the US keeps propagating, everybody else within the so-called civilized world keeps propagating, is actually absurd. Because when you give the Islamic radicalized an option to have socio-economic welfare, please show me which Islamic radicalized country in the Middle East has seen socio-economic welfare growth other than of their leaders. Yeah. The Hamas leaders were billionaires living in billion worth mansions in another country, in Qatar, right? How much of it actually percolated to the Hamas on the ground? It's the same with Hezbollah. It's the same with the Houthis. It's the same with any Islamic radicalized organization, whether it is Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Libya or Yemen or any of them. What has happened to the people? Have the people actually gained anything from an economic growth? They have not. So Islamic radicalization is a threat to the whole world. I believe, as much as I disagree with Benjamin Netanyahu politically, I believe what Benjamin Netanyahu is doing and Israel as a nation is doing by eradicating terrorism and terrorism-backed outfits is what the world needs to stand up and support. We have terrorism in India, inside of India, and on our backyard. Tomorrow, if that happens to us, if the kind of atrocities that happen to the women, the children, and the elderly, we would want the rest of the world to stand with us as well, and that's why the world needs to stand with Israel. Israel is not fighting Palestine. Israel is not fighting Lebanon. Israel is only dealing with the terrorists. If the civilians are coming in front, they are doing it because they are complicit of the terrorism in that region. And that is what people need to understand. I would invite people who are attacking Israel to understand the nature of the horror, the barbarity of the issue. If the place was not under working towards peace, why were Arab nations coming together to work for peace? Because they understand that the region requires peace. The region needs to go forward. You had Saudi Arabia coming to the Abraham Accords, Bahrain, you have various UAE coming to it. Why were they coming to it?
Right, because they saw the futility of conflict and they wanted to make a better future for their people.
As you rightly said earlier, I think the attack on Israel through Hamas was to effect this socio-economic change that was happening to Middle East. It was to attack the AMEC, as you rightly said, because any stability in the region would eradicate the money that is going to terrorist organizations. UNRWA, for example, billions of dollars going to UNRWA. How much of the refugees have the UNRWA brought back to not being refugees and to legitimizing their existence in the society that they are? UNRWA has about 30,000 teachers that are there. What is the content? There are reports coming out from there. United Nations is supporting them. All of them are Palestinians. There were people who were a part of UNRWA that the Israel has alleged were a part of the terror mobs that came into Israel.
Shocking indeed. And
look at the content, education, right? I will give you some data about the content of the education. It is completely anti-Semitic content.
Yes, they're radicalizing
the
children. The hate for Israel, and indeed. But thank you very much, Savio, for putting all those things into perspective. The message that Benjamin Netanyahu possibly wants to give to the world is something that we will be looking at very closely. Thanks again for your thoughts.
Pleasure.
Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank
Savio.
you, Sandeep. God bless.